Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in less than 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. Today, the legacy of a former president, the trade deals in the works, and the hotel hack affecting millions, plus a historic rocket launch and the most influential movie. Those stories and more in less than 10 minutes. I'm Erica Mandy. Today is Monday, December 3rd. You ready? Let's do this. Late today through Wednesday, Americans will be saying goodbye to former President George H.W. Bush. His body will arrive today in Washington, D.C., and then lie in state in the Capitol Rotunda for a public viewing. And Wednesday will be declared a national day of mourning. The 41st President of the United States died on Friday at his home. George H.W. Bush enlisted in the Navy at just 18 years old. He survived being shot down over the Pacific. He later served in Congress, the United Nations, and was CIA director. He was vice president under Ronald Reagan and, of course, went on to be president himself from 1989 to 1993 during the end of the Cold War. He was married to Barbara Bush for 73 years. Together, they had 6 children. His oldest son, of course, George W. Bush, was the 43rd president. He spoke about his father in a segment on 60 Minutes last night, saying Bush Sr. taught him the presidency, quote, is more important than the man. Former Presidents Bill Clinton and Barack Obama also spoke about him on the segment, saying they could disagree on policies, but they knew they were friends and Americans first. George H.W. Bush was 94. All right, let's talk a little bit about what happened at the G20 summit over the weekend, where the leaders of the world's largest economic powers came together in Argentina. For the U.S., the highlights were all about trade. There was a deal between the U.S. and China, at least a temporary one. The AP reports President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping agreed on a 90-day truce, a timeout of sorts on tariffs. President Trump said he'll hold off on plans to raise tariffs on billions of dollars worth of Chinese imports on January 1st. It's at least meant to buy the leaders time to negotiate more and possibly work out a more permanent trade deal. To be continued. And on the sidelines of the summit, President Trump also signed the new NAFTA deal, the one to replace the North American Free Trade Agreement. Remember, President Trump says the new version is called the USMCA, or the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. The 3 neighboring countries went through a pretty tense year of negotiations, but ultimately agreed to rewrite many of the trade rules for the auto industry and others, and they made it official over the weekend. But here's the thing. The agreement still has to be ratified in those 3 countries, aka Congress has to give the thumbs up in the U.S., and the Hill reports that is not a guarantee. So President Trump says he plans to formally get rid of the current NAFTA rules soon, so lawmakers then have to choose, approve the new one, or don't have any trade deal in place at all. And one more thing of note from the G20 summit, the U.S. was the only member nation not to reaffirm commitment to the Paris Climate Accord. Remember, President Trump has said he's withdrawing the U.S. from the deal altogether. Today, meetings are planned between government officials in France and organizers of what CBS News says is the worst urban riot in France in a decade. This past weekend was the 3rd weekend in a row now of violent protests there. Protesters trashed the streets in Paris, setting cars on fire and breaking store windows. Hundreds of people were arrested and many hurt. The New York Times reports protesters are mostly people angry about a rise in fuel taxes. In Illinois, a series of tornadoes hit over the weekend. AccuWeather reports there were more than 20 tornado reports. A few people were seriously hurt. And in Alaska, a big earthquake hit on Friday, and since then, there have been more than 1,000 aftershocks. CNN reports the magnitude 7.0 quake knocked out power, split and buckled roads, and damaged buildings in Anchorage. It was the 2nd largest earthquake in Alaska since 1964. The governor issued a disaster declaration. The good news in Alaska, at least, no reports of serious injuries. And officials say things are starting to get back to normal. Let's take a quick break from reality because today's sponsored story is from the new Christmas classic, Welcome to Tinseltown. If you're a fan of holiday movies like The Grinch and Frozen, or maybe your kids are, or your friends, or your nieces and nephews, then you will all love this fantastical new holiday podcast, Welcome to Tinseltown. It follows the lovable Holly as she's transported to the magical realm of Tinseltown, where it's Christmas every day. Holly must navigate a world of talking candy canes, ice skating yetis, polar bear queens, and more, all to get back home. This is a highly produced and heartwarming holiday story, sure to get you in the Christmas spirit.
People say there's no such thing as magic. I know better.
And no need to wait to join in on the fun and adventure. All 7 episodes are available now for free. So be sure to subscribe to Welcome to Tinseltown on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or whatever your favorite app is. Just search Welcome to Tinseltown. That's spelled Tinsel. Welcome to Tinseltown. Now back to the news. SpaceX is expected to launch its Falcon 9 rocket today after a few delays earlier, but there's a few reasons we're talking about this launch. One of them, CNN reports along with dozens of small satellites, the rocket is taking up cremated remains of people who want to be up with the stars. Another company sold the option to families for nearly $2,500 and then pays SpaceX to take them up. This launch will make history another way as well. If all goes according to plan, it'll be the first time a reusable rocket takes off a third time. So far, SpaceX has only sent the same rocket to space twice. Reusing rockets helps make sure space travel becomes cheaper. And finally, Space.com says it'll mark the 19th launch of 2018, setting a new record for SpaceX for the number of launches within 1 year. Heads up, travelers, there was a big data breach on Marriott's Starwood reservation system, possibly exposing personal information of up to 500 million hotel guests. In fact, the Wall Street Journal says it's one of the biggest data breaches in history. So what kind of personal information are we talking about here? Well, it might include everything from name and email addresses to passport numbers and even credit card information. Marriott said in a statement it's doing everything it can to support guests and learn from this issue. It's investigating and working with law enforcement. But this wasn't just recently. The company says it learned about this hack in September, but the database may have been exposed as early as 2014. For the second weekend in a row, the Disney movie Ralph Breaks the Internet won the box office. The Hollywood Reporter says it brought in about $26 million over the weekend. The weekend after Thanksgiving typically does not have a lot of new releases. So maybe movie success is not just about the box office numbers. A new study looked at movies' influence on other movies. Newsweek reports researchers in Italy found the most influential film of all time is The Wizard of Oz. So how did researchers decide? Well, they used a computer algorithm to give thousands of movies an influence score using citations from a popular industry database of movies. The idea is that a movie referenced a lot has been influential on others. Ariana Grande's latest music video just broke YouTube's all-time record for the most views in the first 24 hours of a release. It's the music video for the pop star's latest single, Thank You Next. It has references to movies like Mean Girls, Bring It On, and Legally Blonde. The video broke the record with 46 million views in less than 22 hours. And before we go today, I want to wish everyone who does celebrate a happy Hanukkah. Today is the first full day of the Jewish holiday, also known as the Festival of Lights. It started last night at sundown and lasts for 8 days. Hanukkah then ends on the evening of Monday, December 10th. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. And if you want to read more about any of the stories mentioned, I list all the sources and story links for you in today's show notes. Just head on over to thenewsworthy.com, click episodes, and look for today's date. You'll also find a link to that new and heartwarming holiday podcast, Welcome to Tinseltown, so be sure to check it out. The Newsworthy is ready for you every weekday by 4 in the morning. I'll be back with more news tomorrow. Have a great day.